Hey there, gang. This is Dr. Dane here at Mother Goose Chiropractic, your friendly neighborhood chiropractor. I wanted to dive on and do a webinar for you guys this afternoon. We have a couple minutes before our patients start rolling in for the afternoon. And this is a little explanation of how chiropractic can help build adaptability and resiliency so that when life stacks up and the stress mounts, how you can be healthy in the face of that and make sure that you can reach all your goals and achieve healthy children, healthy families. And this really gets to the heart of what we do here at Mother Goose Chiropractic. So that being said, let's dive in. If you guys are on here, give me a shout out and let me know how this looks. So first big concept that I want to go through is that you live your life through your nervous system. So a lot of people think of chiropractors as bone doctors or back and neck pain doctors. Nothing could be farther from the truth. So can we help with musculoskeletal pain? Can we help with aches and pains and numbness and tingling in the back and the neck down into the arms and legs? Can we help people avoid surgery after they've tried, PT and injections and even a failed surgery? Of course, we can help people with chronic back and neck pain. But really what I wanted to do today is dive into the science behind what we do. And when you understand the science, you'll understand Mother Goose Chiropractic and why we serve infants and children and families. This week we had a new pregnant mom start. We had 2 infants start, toddler and a mom. So we see them all here. And once you guys understand the science, you'll understand why. So the first big concept is that you live your life through your nervous system. I don't know if you've ever thought about that before, but if you look at the image on the right there, I take care of a couple of electricians, and those were the best conversations because I got to say, hey, look at that. What does that look like? The brain and the body, how they communicate. The spine, it's basically a big circuit breaker, right? So the spine and the nervous system are intimately related, and your brain is always taking in information from the environment and making a decision about how it's going to run the body. Now, if that communication is running effectively, then you have perfect adaptation and perfect health. No, just kidding. What we want to do is build adaptability, like I said, in the face of stress. So if that communication pathway is free of stress and interference, your brain and your body is going to be adapting you to your environment, and you're going to be healthy. So that is really the big picture view of what we do, and that's our mantra here at Mother Goose. So that being said, to understand how the nervous system works, know that the brain and the body, the nervous system runs the body through 2 different states. We talk about this all the time with kiddos with ADD and on the autism spectrum and sensory processing disorders that we take care of here in the office. Speaking of which, we are doing our Perfect Storm workshop next month. So if you know someone that's affected by that, feel free to let us know. We can get them signed up for that. But that being said, your central nervous system runs in 2 states. You have a gas pedal mode and a brake pedal mode. You have the sympathetic nervous system, which is, a lot of folks have heard of the fight or flight response. That is a short-term survival response. It's meant for short bursts. So back when we were hunting and gathering and a tiger came out of the jungle, all of your brain and nervous system changed your hormone profile. You dump hormones into the bloodstream like cortisol, just like after a car accident. That ups your heart rate, your blood pressure. It slows down your digestion and your immune system because you don't need those when you're running from a tiger. That gas pedal mode, it's a short-term survival response. It's for short bursts. Now, the other half of the nervous system, your parasympathetics, we call that the brake pedal mode. That's where all the good stuff is. That's where you should be spending the majority of your time. So in other words, that's where rest, muscle recovery, digestion, your immune system, growth and development in kiddos and children, focus and concentration, good move, good socialization skills. So those are all the rest and repair functions of the body. Now here is what happens. There's a problem. Life happens, right? So in other words, sources of stress can stack up and overwhelm and confuse the brain and the nervous system. And when that happens, that gas pedal mode, that sympathetic mode, can get stuck on, just like a flipped circuit breaker. So let's look at some of the sources of stress. You can see over here in pediatrics and in pregnancy, we take care of a lot of pregnant and expectant mamas. We take care of a lot of babies and a lot of kiddos. Interuterine constraint. So the goal of pregnancy care is to make sure that there's no constraint in the uterus. We make sure that mom's pelvis is moving and grooving the way that it's supposed to. So there's no stress on the ligaments and the uterus, so that baby can move around and go vertex head down in that optimal fetal positioning for shorter labor times and less reliance on medications. That's what chiropractic in pregnancy does. When during the birth process, if there's intervention, cesarean, forceps, vacuum extraction, birth trauma, okay, baby gets pulled out, and we work with a lot of OBs, rock and roll, big shout out to A Woman's Place, NCH, those guys are great. We love working back and forth with them. They send us a lot of pregnant women because they know that they do whatever they have to do to get baby out, but sometimes that delicate upper neck can, have that sprain, strain, and that imbalance, and that kind of sets the stage for that stress response. And again, falls, traumas, accidents, that's that type of stuff as well. And when it comes to stress, we usually think of mental, emotional stress. So that can be, environmental stuff. It can be work life, family life, stressful situation at school, with social relationships with peers and kiddos. That's one of the bigger things that I see. So that mental stress can stack up too. And then also, of course, the environment, right? Diet, environmental toxins, medications. We don't always eat as healthy as we should. When you're on the run, you grab a bite, fast food. Those things stack up. So traumas, stresses, and toxins, they can stack up in life, and they can confuse and overwhelm the brain and the nervous system. And when that happens, what happens is this gas pedal mode gets stuck on. So that burnout and that fatigue in a baby, what does that stress response look like? Well, they're colicky, right? We see that all the time. Babies that are fussy, babies that have a hard time falling asleep, and they only sleep for a half hour to 45 minutes, and they're up all night. So that stresses out mom and dad. So a colicky, stressed baby, then they grow into a toddler with gets told they have mood disorders and meltdowns and tantrums, more so than the status quo. The trouble with transitions, that's another thing that we see. And once the kiddos start walking and talking, trouble transitioning. So that gas pedal mode, that sympathetic stress response continues. When these kiddos get into the system, they get in school, and then a teacher or someone who's assessing them notices and says, hey, you know what, I think they might be on the spectrum, or I think they might have a sensory processing disorder, or gosh, you know what, I think they might have ADD. Well, those things continue on in adulthood, and that neurological imbalance, that stress stuck on in adults, the most common things we see: allergies and low immunity, fatigue, low energy. Guys, keeping your foot on the gas is really energy expensive. So by the time we're in our late 20s and 30s, into our 40s and 50s, fatigue and low energy, it's a really energy expensive mode for the body to stay in. So trouble sleeping, when the brain and the nervous system are wound up thinking that there's a stressor or a tiger around the corner, the body's dumping stress hormones into the bloodstream. It's hard to fall asleep. It's hard to stay asleep, low quality sleep. And of course, that takes a toll on your health as well. It can also affect neurotransmitter balance, right? Anxiety and depression. The immune system and the digestive system live on the other side. So as that gas pedal mode overwhelms the body and those systems, that spills over into other areas. So compromised immune function, sympathetic dominance, the gas pedal mode, weakens your immune system. So we get a lot of kiddos and adults that chronic colds, the sniffles that just, the coughs that just won't go away. Indigestion, so whether that's a colicky baby or an adult with constipation, again, that gas pedal mode suppresses those functions. The brain's not interested in digesting lunch if it thinks you're going to be lunch. And then also, hormone balance gets thrown off. So not just fatigue and energy, but weight gain. As adults, we have that central adiposity, right? That fat that starts to form around the midsection. You go on your diet, you get back in the gym, and those stubborn pounds that are hard to shed. Well, if you're cortisol dominant because your nervous system and your brain is confused and stuck in that gas pedal mode, it's going to make it hard to shed those last couple pounds. We see that a lot. So what do we do to reverse this? What do we do to improve this? What do we do to reset the system? Well, that's the power of what we do with a chiropractic adjustment. In other words, when we check a baby or a kiddo or an adult or a grandma or a grandpa, we are looking for areas where there is movement and motion that has been restricted. So let me dive into this. So subluxation, that is what we're looking for in the spine. When an area of the spine overwhelms like a circuit breaker, it becomes misaligned or fixated, losing its proper range of motion. All right. So what that means is think of a hinge that's off its axis. It doesn't mean that bone is permanently to the right and we have to get it back to the left. That's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is a change in a normal movement pattern, misalignment or fixation. Now what that does is it leads to the third component. So this is where the neurology comes in, because again, chiropractic, pediatric chiropractic, our greatest influence is again on neurology, neurological imbalance. So we call these the 4Ds, guys. This is big, heavy stuff. So I'm going to go through this nice and slow. I would jot these 4 down. Dyskinesia just means lack of proper movement and motion. So if there's an area of the spine that is swollen, stuck, fixated, not moving properly, that bombards the brain with negative input. We call it nociception. Negative input, okay? Think of it like walking around all day with a rock in your shoe. Or some of our sensory and ADD kiddos, I tell mom and dad, it's kind of like having Metallica turn on in the background. So that abnormal movement leads to disafferentation. That is abnormal neural input into the brain. So the brain is a big computer, right? It's your body's taking in sensory information from the environment. But if you have areas of the spine that are stressed and strained and are bombarding the brain with negative input, that confuses and overwhelms the brain and the nervous system, and that it was what kicks the body into that gas pedal mode, sympathetic overdrive, the fight or flight response. Now, what's important to understand about these areas in the spine, this isn't something that you can meditate away or sit up straight or stretch and have it disappear. These abnormal movement or motion patterns in the spine, they, again, bombard the brain with negative input. And what's so insidious about this, if it's unaddressed, is that rewires the brain. And it pre-wires and changes the set point of your central nervous system and rewires the brain so it's easier to dive into that stress mode. So when the brain goes into sympathetic overdrive and that gas pedal, that stress stuck on, the brain tries to normalize the output, but it can't. So think of it as garbage in, garbage out. And if you Google the fourth component here, dyskinesis, that symptom set is almost identical to the symptoms that are manifested in a child's behavior in attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. Abnormal energy output and control. So again, I'm going to run through those 4 because these 4Ds are huge to understand the neurology behind pediatric chiropractic and how we can help adults, children, and families regain their potential and regain their health. Dyskinesia, abnormal alignment and fixation. Okay, think of the hinge off its axis. Abnormal alignment and fixation. That motion segment kicks abnormal negative input into the brain, and then the brain gets confused, the nervous system gets confused and goes into a short-term survival response, defensive protective mode we call sympathetic overdrive. Garbage in, garbage out. And then that results in the brain kicking out abnormal energy output and control. So that's where symptoms come from over time, okay? You guys want to fire some comments down or questions, that's totally fine, guys. If we understand how subluxation, how misalignment and fixation in the spine as a consequence of stress from life overwhelming the brain can cause negative health outcomes over time. Now we know the cause of what's going on. Now we know how to reverse it and correct it. And that is the power of a chiropractic adjustment. As you can see here, there's my lovely, talented wife, Dr. Carrie. She is getting an infant checked and adjusted. You can see there she's using a fingertip contact because when we get infants checked and adjusted, like I said, we had two infants start this week. We use a pinky. There's no thrust, there's no snap, crackle, pop, none of that nonsense. It's called a sustained contact adjustment, meaning all we do is apply a little bit of gentle pressure in the right vector, the right direction, and it takes about the same amount of force as it does to check the rightness of a tomato. Safe, gentle, and effective in the pediatric population. So we were checking a little baby there on the side. So when we get a baby or a kiddo or a mom or a dad checked and adjusted, we restore proper alignment and movement in the spine, okay? That's huge. Neurologically, that is like putting wind back into the windmill so the spine can move properly and charge the brain. It's absolutely incredible, the neurology behind this stuff, guys. So that proper movement and motion in the spine, again, it feeds the brain like wind to a windmill. That restores the proper flow of input, we call it proprioception, into the brain. Now that balances out the autonomic nervous system. When you restore normal input and normal movement and motion, then the brain can recognize what's going on and say, oh, okay, there's no tiger coming out of the jungle. I'm just sitting in traffic getting to work. Or, oh, okay, I don't need to try and punch or bite this kiddo coming up to me. It's just that the teacher's called that recess is over, so it's time to put down the kickball and I have to go back in and sit down. It balances out the autonomic nervous system. It calms down that sympathetic stress response, and the brain is able to calm, connect, reorganize, and heal. That's what we do with kiddos. And so if you normalize the input, the brain will adapt and normalize the output. So when we normalize that output and energy and control from the brain to the body, that's where we celebrate wins. That's where kiddos' behavior improves. That's where the indigestion improves. That's where the kids' colds go away. We call that kicking the sick. The chronic cold's gone. They start behaving better. They start having easier transitions. They start getting better report cards. All that good stuff. When we calm and reconnect the nervous system, that's when kiddos are able to thrive, when they're able to process information. Obviously, what's a sensory processing issue, right? That gas pedal mode, the brain's not integrating information because it's in that defensive, protective, stress stuck on gas pedal. So we call this in kiddos awaking the brake. We awake the brake pedal, the rest and repair half of the nervous system, so the brain can calm and connect and heal. It's amazing. I wanted to share with you guys, we're all about science at Mother Goose Chiropractic, but I also wanted to share one of my favorite success stories. Heads up, I was one of the first, ADD Ritalin kids in the 90s. It's why I do what I do. My parents, I grew up in the North Shore of Boston. They took me to Mass General Hospital, best doctors in the world. They were not told about this stuff. They were not told about pediatric chiropractic and that there was a better way. So what I would say is if you're struggling with these types of issues and you've been told that it's a chemical imbalance, I'm going to stake my reputation and our clinical experience and our success right here at Mother Goose, helping these kiddos out of the storm, and say that it's not a chemical imbalance, it's a neurological imbalance. And we can calm and reconnect and heal that brain and nervous system, and these children grow, develop, and thrive. I've seen it time and time again, hundreds of cases. It's why God put me here. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning. Amen. So this is Mikey. Mikey reminds me of when I was a little kid. He came to us about a year ago. He was in VPK and getting sent home 3 times a week from school. So my gosh, can you imagine the toll that takes on that little guy's self-esteem and the stress that puts on the family, and mom and dad having to leave work to come get this guy 3 times a week? Holy cow. And they knew we get a lot of people in that golden window of opportunity in the VPK system before they're formally in kindergarten, formally in the school system, where they don't want their kiddo, to be diagnosed formally. So we had limited time to work with this guy and reset his system, but we started him on a plan. And if you see there before care and after care, I'm going to go into a little bit of detail of the scans that we do in this office. So when we assess an individual or a kiddo or an infant or a pregnant mom, we do a comprehensive neurological analysis and a customized profile to look and see exactly where the sources of stress and tension in the nervous system are. So you can see there all the red. We go into more detail when you come see us in the office, but just you understand that red is not good. Red is that gas pedal mode where that system is swollen and stuck, and the brain and the body are not adapting and not communicating properly. So we got Mikey under care, and about a month in, he came running into the office, super excited and saying to me, I got 2 greens. I got 2 greens. I didn't know what that meant, and I had to talk to mom and dad, and they explained to me that the VPK that he was in used a stoplight grading system, and he had gone from getting mostly reds, bad behavior, to 2 greens, good behavior. So again, why we do what we do, the reward of that, to see a renewed sense of self-esteem and confidence in that child, not just because the behavior got better, not just because he's healthier and better off without stress in his system, but the smile on that little kid's face, to have some self-confidence and self-esteem, absolutely incredible. That's what we're all about here at Mother Goose Chiropractic. So, getting ready in the mornings and winding down for bed at night is a breeze. And not only that, but little Mikey received Student of the Week not once but twice, this past Thanksgiving and also at the beginning of this month in April, which is absolutely amazing. So that being said, science and stories, it's what we're all about here at Mother Goose. So it's a nice theory, right? So how do we know? What do we do? Well, what does a healthy nervous system look like? We, in this office, when you come in, we will do a health history, and we look at sources of stress that have stacked up, whether that's a traumatic birth, or just sitting too much because you're a desk jockey, or a long commute, or a chemical overload, or whatever it is, or maybe a difficult time at home or at work, family life or mental emotional stress, whatever it is that's overwhelmed your system, we will figure out what's going on, where your system is stuck in that gas pedal mode, and we will do a full analysis. And once we know where the stress and tension is in the nervous system, we will know how to calm and reconnect the brain and the body, and get your system adapting and healing. We call it awakening the brake pedal. Again, that's where hormone balance lives. That's where quality of sleep lives. That's where digestion and immune function, hormone balance, all the good stuff, focus, cognition, learning, memory. So that is the goal of what we do here at Mother Goose Chiropractic. And that being said, a quote that I coined about 2 years ago, there is no limit to you or your child's potential with a clear neurological connection. That being said, if this message resonates with you and you're curious, what we suggest is just get checked. Come in, get checked, get scanned, and we can take a look and dive in, and whatever you choose to do with that information is up to you. But we believe that you deserve to know, especially when it comes to the health of your child and your family. So that is how we help people mitigate sources of stress in their life by building adaptability and resiliency in the central nervous system. So when life throws overwhelm at you, you have a cushion, you have a shock absorber, and your brain and body can adapt so you don't crash and burn. And what that looks like in children and families is growing and developing and adapting optimally. That is what we do here at Mother Goose Chiropractic. So thanks so much, guys. If you found this information helpful, feel free to make a copy, rip the video, give it away, tag a friend, email the link. We really appreciate it. And look for, coming up on May 14th, we're doing a dinner workshop on the perfect storm, looking at the causes of ADD, sensory processing, and autism spectrum disorders. So we're looking forward to that. Thanks so much, guys. As always, if we can be of any help or any service or answer any questions, feel free to reach out, give us a call, shoot us a DM, and we will do what we do best, which is help children and families reach their full health potential. Thanks, guys. This is Dr. Dane from Mother Goose Chiropractic signing off. Love you guys.